Wonderful. The progress we've made in recent years in mental health care is indeed worth celebrating. However, there is still much work to be done to ensure that those living with mental health challenges are treated with the same respect and dignity as everyone else. As we delve into this multifaceted subject, our panelists bring their wealth of knowledge and experiences to explore the issue from various perspectives. So please put your hands together for our moderator Minu, Basi, CEO and founder of LRS Wellness, and panelists, Conrad Aquino, MD, Chief Experience Officer, Stress-Free Initiative, Raheel, Siddiqui, Motivational Speaker, Coleen Greco, Joyologist at Coleen Greco, Faith Sundaralingam, founder and psychotherapist at Renewing Minds Therapy, and Dr. Nusha, Nouhi, PhD, clinical psychologist at Marina Health of California. The topic of discussion is mental health care, how far we've come and what needs to be done. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Test. Is this working? Can you guys hear me? With a few of us left in here, so hang in there. We'll make this fun and interactive. So thank you for joining us virtually as well as in person. And yes, mental health is on the rise. And it's time to do something about that. It's on the rise due to the post-pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic. It's on the rise with smaller family units. It's on the rise with less community involvement. It's on the rise with all the social media apps that are bringing individuals more introverts versus being extroverted. There's less interaction with humans and more interaction with technology and apps. And it's time to change that. And that's why we have our specialists here to discuss their piece of mental health and why they do what they do and what's been your experience in it. And also, if you can briefly introduce yourself as well before you speak on the topic.
All right, well, good afternoon. I'm Conrad Aquino, Chief Experience Officer, Stress-Free Initiative. I'm originally from the Philippines, came over here in 2007 and landed in West Virginia. Not that America that I had in mind coming from the Philippines, right? So anyway, brought my family here now. We live in Maryland. I have a family with 3 kids. The eldest is 17 now, going to college. Mom is not quite still ready to separate with our eldest, but that's when.
Maryland, shout out. I live in Maryland too. So Raheel, Siddiqui. If you guys didn't hear me this morning, I am a motivational speaker. I recently lost 190 pounds and just blessed and thankful to be here. My journey's been pretty wild and booking engagements across multiple platforms, and really want to help share my message, my story, my background about how I was able to overcome so much adversity, struggles, mental health issues, just a little bit. And, can't wait to have this amazing discussion with this amazing panel here.
Great, thank you. Coleen Greco, Joyologist. So happy to be here. So my story, very personal as well. About 6 years ago, my son was 10 years old and he attempted suicide. And thankfully he's okay. But as you can imagine, that brought our family to our knees, and that really made me question quite a bit. We made a lot of changes as we were beginning to repair and rebuild. I did a lot of work on myself. We did a lot of mental health work within the house. But it really sort of unveiled to me my calling, which is joy. And everything I do when I coach clients, be it in nutrition or their mindset or their approach to their own life, is firmly grounded in joy. So thank you for having me.
Hi, everyone. My name is Faith Sundaralingam. I am a psychotherapist and founder of Renewing Minds Therapy. I'm also a speaker and an author. My why started at the age of 4, quite young. I should also say I'm from Toronto, Canada, repping the Six today, if you know Drake. My why started at the age of 4. My mother was diagnosed with a chronic long-term illness, and that really shook up our household. I saw the impact of trauma occur within a marriage. I saw it take place in a family. I saw it impact my childhood. And she unfortunately passed away when I was 16. And so that really catapulted me into this whirlwind of just unpacking what I was navigating in my childhood, which was essentially a childhood that was lost. So I'm continuing to learn that, and that's essentially why I do what I do. I want to be able to engage in mental health conversations and dialogue, the conversations that I never necessarily got to have when I was going through my journey. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nusha Nouhi. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I'm based out of San Diego, California. My company is called Marina Health of San Diego. My why, or my purpose, essentially, started out between the summer, first and second year of college, when I was volunteering at a cancer hospital in the pediatric ward. And I was working with patients one-on-one, just providing general support, water, movies, things like that. And I just started noticing how often the medical doctors were really rushing in and out of the rooms, and how they weren't getting a lot of focus on the behavioral, emotional, mental toll of what the cancer diagnosis was for these patients. And so I switched from pre-med to psychology, much to my parents' surprise. And here I am today. And I focus primarily on how physical health conditions affect the individual and provide support through their journeys in that. And I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. And my why briefly, mental health is something that I battled with throughout my life and during many situations and times. But the reason why I got into developing LRS wellness was there was a time when I worked for corporations, and I thought I was at my high peak of my career, reporting to the president of the company, everything's going well. And I had to go in for my meeting, but I sat in my car frozen, not being able to move. My mind, I still can't explain what was going on. My mind was working, but body wasn't. And all I kept saying to myself was, oh, you have a meeting coming up, you gotta go in. And a couple of minutes later, I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I can't. And missed that meeting, missed the second meeting, finally built up the courage to open the car door and go straight into my president's office. And I told Mike, I can't do this anymore. I don't have it in me. He's like, what do you need? How can we help? And I said, you could put $1 million on the table, it's still not enough. And that's when he said those keywords that you're in the self-fulfillment stage. And I believe today everybody is in the self-fulfillment stage. Our needs are met in terms of resources, nutrition. We have a lot of services and products that can help each one of us. But what it takes for more than that, it takes for us to go in and really analyze and figure out what it is that we need, and to feel authentic in our bodies and to be as real as possible so that we can spread that wellness to others. So that's how LRS started, and it's been established since 2017. And the goal in the long run is to be the Amazon of wellness services. And I will continue to the next question. Now that we know what we know, with our 3 days of conference, with meeting with so many intelligent minds, discovering so many amazing apps, what can we do from here on forward to ensure that mental health can be combated, that it doesn't continue to go on the rise that it has been?
All right, so forgive me. I didn't know we were talking about the why the first time we introduced ourselves. So let me tell my story. So started when I was still a kid, teenager. I had chest pains, a lot of chest pains, and the chest pains would happen anywhere, anytime, at church, at school, wherever that was. And I didn't know what it was at that time. But going into med school, I started to learn more about what heart attacks are. And then the way that the cardiologist was describing what a heart attack is and what you feel like when your chest pain, like, wait a minute, I feel that. I know that feeling. And so I approached him and asked him, hey, I know that feeling. I've been experiencing that as a teenager. Like, what do you mean by that? As a teenager, it's not heard of, having heart attacks as a teenager. So he took a listen to my heart, there was something wrong with it. And there was a third heart sound. You shouldn't have a third heart sound. And got it checked up, and they saw everything was normal, but let's proceed further. They did an echo, which is basically an ultrasound of the heart. They saw a huge part of my heart that doesn't work anymore. So it was really a stress-induced type of heart attack, even as a teenager. And it further progressed, although they gave me pills for that, it further progressed to give me more anxieties. And the anxieties with the palpitations, the sense of impending doom, it just happened at random instances, driving, buying groceries and things like that. But the thing is, what happened to me, the why I'm here today, is because I was able to change that around, where my life has totally changed, a 180, to be able to, do something about it. And to go to the next question now, what do we do about it? What did I do about that to be able to change that mindset, to be able to get where I am? Well, right now, I'll be honest with you, it might shock people, but the truth is there is nothing that stresses me anymore. So from that day that I realized that, and I remember it clearly back in 2008, it was spring. From that day onward, I was relieved of all the chest pain. I was relieved of all my anxieties, and I didn't have to change my work, my job, my family to be able to do that. It was as simple as realizing what those stresses are and taking away those stresses. Because the stresses exist when we have, let's say, the difference of our expectations and what actually happens. So the greater the difference between our expectations and what happens, the greater the stress. The smaller the difference, the smaller the stress. And sometimes they align. The stress level that we have plus, the expectations that we have, like maybe you got promoted and this is what I expected. And so, sure, yes, wonderful. But it rarely happens that way. There's always that gap between the expectation and what actually happens, and what we fear about, what has happened in the past, what might happen in the future, and what it is right now. So what I did was to simply remove the expectations. So if you remove the expectations, there's nothing to compare reality with, right? And without comparing something with reality, the gap ceases to exist. And because it ceases to exist, there is no stress. That's kind of my superpower today. The peace of mind that I have does not rely anymore on my job, the people I interact with, my bank account, and it's just happens. So I'd just like to share that with everyone.
Awesome. So I guess I'll kind of do a two-part, adding to my why and also to the question of where we can get better. So my why, briefly, I fast forward to 2010 January. I was 27 years old. I was 405 pounds, very broken, very depressed. I mean, I was on a downward spiral. My father, who was a healthcare professional at that time, he was a pharmacist. He just looked at me one day, blue in the face, and he was like, I got to take you to the doctor. I'm getting very concerned for you and your health. Let's go get checked out. Got my blood work done, went to the doctor's office. A few days later, doctor comes out, has a folder in his hand. The results are in the folder. Looks at my father and I, flips through the few pages of results, closes the folder, throws the folder on the counter, and looks right at my father and I and says, it doesn't matter what these results say. Your son will be dead by the time he's 40 anyways. I mean, we're kind of wasting our time here. And that was it. And first thought was, well, there goes a 5-star review for you. But my father and the doctor talked for a couple minutes, and then we left. Fastest doctor's visit ever. Driving home, I was driving. My father was in the passenger seat. We're about halfway home. My father was like, hey, I need you to pull the car over. I said, okay, is everything okay? He said, pull the car over. And he had looked at me right in the eye, and he said, listen, this isn't a game. I'm running out of time. I won't be there to see you get married. I won't be there to see you have kids. You need to take this seriously. You need to promise me. And, I'm thinking to myself, I'm a father now, so I'm like, typical parents child relationship. Oh, my dad, you're just talking crazy. But I just saw the pain in his eyes, like the watery eyes. And he had a liver issue that he was dealing with at that time. And it was really wearing on him. So I just felt like in that moment, that was like his one moment to kind of really get through to me, maybe his last moment. So I said, okay, I promise I will do my best. I promise I will try to, take this seriously. Tried and failed a lot. Joined a local gym. Tried to play pickup basketball, just kept quitting. It's hard to tell a guy who's 405 pounds and who doesn't see light at the end of the tunnel. But, few close friends of mine told me about a local gym, joined that gym from May 2010 to May 2011. I lost my first 150 pounds and I felt like I was an unstoppable force. My father was happy. I fulfilled my promise to him. July 2011 rolls around. 2 months later, go for a family wedding in Connecticut. And we're thinking we're just going to go for the wedding and come back. The night of the reception in the hotel room, my father's liver blows out. He ends up dying like right in our hands. And it was just a very, traumatic experience. And I'm thinking to myself, man, like life is just not fair, But I think the end all be all is I just have like this fire that burns inside of me. And throughout all the experiences that I've been through, and I felt like when he looked at me at 405 pounds, he saw the guy that you guys are seeing now. I didn't see that. It's like he just had this vision inside of him, like looking right at me. And he just felt like I was different and he felt like I was special. And when all of you guys leave here today, I want you guys to understand that you guys are different and you guys are special in your own way too. And I truly believe that. I feel like somebody, a loved one, a spouse, a child, a parent, they probably see that in you too. And maybe you can find it yourself, but I truly feel like that's how I feel. And I feel that now. And I feel like 13 years later, I've been through so much in my life. With the day of the funeral, I actually ended up blowing out my back. I had severe sciatica down my leg, L3, L4 for 8 years. So I actually gained about 60 to 65 pounds. As the years go by, January 2020, I blow out my second herniated disc. I had back surgery. I didn't want to keep going. I wanted to quit. I did quit, man. I wanted to quit. I didn't want to do it anymore. But my wife, my rock, my everything, she was like, you can't quit. You made a promise to your dad. My son was just born a few months earlier. She was like, you need to be the best version for our son, mentally and physically. And she's like, I know you, man. Like, I know you. I know you love to train. I know exactly how you are. And she was like, you will never be the best version of yourself. You will never be happy until you fulfill your promise, but also be the best version of yourself. So every day I wake up, every single day, and I hope all of you hear it in my voice, I just have like that fire that just burns in me. Like I probably have nothing left to prove to everybody who ever doubted me, but I still have everything left to prove. And I tell everybody, don't ever sell yourself short. If you want to be great at something, go get it. I always believe in my philosophy that life has nothing but a bunch of walls. It's up to you and you alone. Either you run away from those walls or you run right through it. And every morning I get up, I'm going to run through every wall that comes in front of my way. And that really stems from my dad and my wife and my son. And in terms of where we're going really quickly, I feel as though you have to be selfish. And what I mean by that is do what you need to do. It's okay to not hang out with friends. It's okay to not hang out with families. It's okay to not to socialize. It's okay to take time for yourself. You're never going to find, that stability in your mind if you're so worried about taking care of others. I get it. We're all, or I don't want to say all, but we feel like we all have responsibilities towards loved ones, relationships, kids, and I get all that, and that's great. But but there's 24 hours in a day, and I hate it when people always tell me, Raheel, I want to exercise like you, or I want to get to an exercise program, but I don't have time. You have time. There's 24 hours in a day. You work 8 hours, you sleep 8 hours, you have commuting, you have family. You have 1 hour to dedicate for your physical health and your mental health. So bottom line is you have to find a way to be selfish. And I promise you, if you can lock in that brain and keep that discipline, put that in your mind. I am going to dedicate 1 hour to myself. Be selfish, because you're not just being selfish to be, greedy. You're being selfish because you want to be better. You want to be better for yourself, and that way that could be the best version of you for all of your loved ones and so forth.
Mic drop. So I think, when we're talking about where mental health is going, there are a few words that come to mind, and I can appreciate what your doctor said to you, but I think, we need to be leading far more with kindness than berating a patient. It did work for you. You snapped out of it, and thank God you did. And your dad had your conversations with you. But I do think most people don't respond to that, and they actually spiral even further. And so in my line of work, I'm trying to teach people about self-love, and self-love is the foundation of any transformation, and it's so critically important to mental health. But being kind to yourself is one of the toughest things to do. You can be kind to other people. We all hold doors for people, buy each other coffee, whatever, but who looks in the mirror and can say with complete conviction that they love who they see? Not many people, which is why I'm employed. But I really want to get more and more people to that point, to the point where they can really love who they are. I also want to remove the stigmas that are associated with mental health. I shared that my son had committed suicide, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. He attempted suicide. And thankfully he is okay today, thank God. But we didn't have any services. No one would take my call. I made hundreds of calls and left messages. No one, not one person would take his case. And so imagine, I'm in shambles, he's in shambles, my husband, my other son. And so there's this stigma. Nobody wanted to take on a 10-year-old that had a suicide story associated with them. And I think we have to have more resources available, if that's the case, to be able to rebuild. And I think, again, we have to talk about these stories. I think even now he's really proud of where he is, where he's come from, but he won't use the word. And I use it all the time on purpose because I want to make sure that people know that this stuff happens every single day in every single city, in every single country in the world, at any age. And it's frightening. And I think it's because we don't allow people to talk about it. So I think, removing the stigmas, being super kind, being very dialed into self-love and compassion, I think are keys to unlocking mental health issues. And you also need to, one of the things I work with my clients on is redirecting their response to triggers. So understanding that those stories that you tell yourself are not true. And I'm sure, you two will back me up on that and probably talk a little bit more about it, but they're not true. And once you can figure out how to let those stories go, the sky is the limit. And it's really, really empowering. And I think that was the turning point for me when I realized that story that I was telling myself wasn't true. I thought, well, that means I can tell myself a different story, right? Because I made that one up, obviously, right? And so that was a turning point for me. And once my clients master that, they very much end up, going to a point that far surpasses their expectations. So just want to kind of encourage that line of thinking too. And I'm glad you're here.
I appreciate what you mentioned about stigma, because for me, growing up as a Tamil Canadian woman, young child at the time, conversations around mental health were very keep it hush hush, keep it in your home and don't talk about it. Don't let everybody else know what's going on, because if you project that to everybody else, they're going to look at you and they're going to judge you and assume things about you. And so we hear this whole these connotations around sanest, crazy tendencies, right? That's what you used to affiliate mental health and illness towards. So for me, a big thing, and I think what we need to work towards, is engaging in dialogue and being intentional about it. If I didn't take the time and listen to myself and work within in order to deal with and get out the very traumas and unpack what was really going on in my mind, I wouldn't be here today talking about it. I think that also comes at that space of being willing and able to unlearn and relearn our very own misconceptions about what mental health, wellness, mental illness looks like across the board. I'm speaking from a Canadian context, but I think we're here with a bunch of innovators and leaders on a global scale. We need to acknowledge what that looks like from every scope, whether it's local, whether it's statewide, whether it's provincial, whether it's national, whatever it looks like for you internationally as well. We need to be able to unlearn and relearn our own biases. What I would also say too is we need to consider accessibility and understand that we will always be engaging with folks who may not have heard about these concepts or even been given opportunity to work through the things that they've been dealing with and living with, whether it's generational, whether it's just starting with them. Systems, institutions, perceptions, family could have set that precedent that you're not able to talk. Let's talk about it. Let's engage, not just have water cooler conversations at the workplace, but actually be intentional and go beyond asking somebody, how are you? Are you okay? Because we can all just say, I'm great, I'm doing good. But are we really doing good? Or are we just saying it for the sake of not having someone really ask you how you're doing? Be intentional and be receptive in those conversations.
Man, guys, you guys are so good. It's so beautifully spoken. So innovations in mental health, where are we going? This is a big question. I really had to think on this because I'm like, we've come so far. And like Minu said earlier, starting out, the pandemic kind of shoved us in a way. And I'm grateful for that, sadly. Nusha didn't require a pandemic to shove us towards mental health, but I'm happy the doors are starting to open. As we touched upon, accessibility is a huge thing. Insurance as a barrier, considering health a part of medical care. Mind is a part of your body. It's all connected. Everything is integrated. This needs to all be together. In that, it takes me to integration, right? So integration, that is so important, whether it's you having a mental health provider in your medical practice or available at the hospital, someone to consult, someone to do what's called a warm handoff. So during a medical appointment, having someone come in and have a chat with the client or the patient about what's going on with them, what the toll is that they're experiencing through their diagnoses, through their chronic illnesses, through their managements of various, stressors in life. And having someone there and, providing and potentially getting that person an appointment right away or getting them connected to an appointment, reducing those barriers, increasing that integration, having on-call consultants available. On-call consultants available to, be available on iPad or by phone, things like that. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, is really the language we use around mental health and medical care. And we've touched upon this a lot in this conversation, this panel, as well as earlier panels. Language, at least in mental health, that's our medicine. The words that we use to interact with patients is our medicine. And we have to be very careful in the language that we use. And it's so important to not make the person their diagnosis. I do not work with diabetics. I work with patients or individuals with diabetes, a person with diabetes, a person with cancer, a person with high blood pressure, any other chronic illness you want to throw at me. That is a person first. Their diagnosis, their medical condition is second. We have to look at the person as a whole and use the appropriate language to address them as an individual in their journey through the waves of life and to support them in that. And I think those three areas, integration, accessibility, language, are really the future of mental health and physical health. Because again, this all integrates. This all is one health. We just, separate it out a little bit in our discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your input on that. And you guys are absolutely right. And you might be thinking why we're here sharing our personal stories on mental health. And it's just to show you that we are a testament to that you can do it. Be real with yourself. You will fall many times. There were days where I felt like that every day was a new day, that I would have to wash the day before out just to be stronger. And that's just it, is that many of us unfortunately experience a deeper level of pain to find that we need to heal ourselves by healing others. But we need to heal ourselves by sharing our stories and by motivating others to know that it's okay, you're not alone, we're all in this together. But what's the most important thing is that moving away from the traditional methods of feeling like that I can't talk about my mental health, that it makes me feel like a weaker person. No, it doesn't. It actually makes you a stronger person. The fact that you're able to still get up and cast your own journey and say that, you know what, I make the decision to be happy or sad today. Like Conrad said, he has the superpower to not stress. And that is a power that all of us hold. We have it within us. That my cousin and I used to say this, zero expectations, and 100% acceptance. And it's as much as it's really hard to stay on that track and keep going and do what's good for all. As long as whatever you're executing, it's a win-win situation for all, that's when you know you're on the right track.
We can open the floor for questions.
We know, last panel, last day. Any questions? Oh, after you.
So, can you hear me? Okay, great. Hi, everyone. By the way, great panel. It was a very intriguing discussion that you guys had, and you highlighted great points. Just to introduce myself, I'm Nita Negra. My background is I'm a registered psychiatric nurse. And what you actually said really hit home to me, that that when you're working in mental health, words are the medicine. So how you communicate and what you communicate is what's going to make an impact to those individuals. And something else that I find in my practice is the concept of trauma-informed practice. And so, which is essentially should be applied universally, where regardless of whether you're working in mental health or just in healthcare in general, assuming that everyone comes in with trauma. Now, I guess my question is to you, do you find working in healthcare that everyone does apply this principle of trauma-informed practice in their approach and in their communication, not just in mental health, but just in healthcare in general? And if not, how can we equip healthcare practitioners to have those skills?
Thank you for your question. That was brilliantly placed. So I'm blessed in that I work in both a private practice and a major hospital system. And I work alongside medical practitioners every day. And we are so lucky because our practitioners are amazing and they come and actually use us and talk to us and ask questions and things. Trauma-informed care, as you said, is very vital. Everyone experiences trauma of some kind at one point in their life or another. And especially when managing illness, it can happen a lot. It happens to everybody. So how do we do that? How do we address that? How do we talk about that? And I think some people are, most providers, I would say, are aware of it. I don't know, or how do I put this? I can't say that they always have time to address it. And I think the time is a part of our accessibility piece, right? Like having the time, having the capacity as a medical provider to sit there and ask, what has this experience been like for you? Like, let's talk about this. Let's talk about what you really struggle with and how that's affected you and potentially how that's been traumatic for you. And it's just not always there. And I think that's a big part of it. And also just, again, like we talked about, learning the language, speaking to someone about trauma, having trauma-informed terms in care. It's very important. It should be integrated within practices. So maybe more trainings, more discussion, more accessibility, all of that. It all is a part of the whole package, providing care.
One of the approaches that I utilize when I work with clients is a trauma-informed approach. And the one thing I will say that I've identified is that a lot of times we maybe are a little bit more hesitant or apprehensive to address trauma for what trauma really is. It is entrenched in a lot of us, like Nusha, you were saying. And I think once we've kind of debunked that and stepped away that it's not a fearful concept to address, that intentionality in terms of what trauma can present as in an individual is really important. Trauma might not come out in our words, it might show up in our body. And I think a lot of the times what happens with trauma is we feel things physically. Bessel van der Kolk, great individual, he wrote this book called The Body Keeps a Score. And he wrote about how trauma shows up in the body. And I think maybe it would be something to look into. It's a great resource to really see how it shows up. And he identifies how he's worked with his patients in terms of unlocking that. From a therapy perspective, I think also with medical practitioners, it's important that we're in constant dialogue and we're creating an avenue of access to communicate about it, again, to debunk that fear, that maybe might sit as an umbrella over what trauma can look like and how we can work through it effectively as well. Yeah, and to normalize it, as Nusha was saying. Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but thank you for answering that. That was brilliant. Thanks.
No problem. So one of the things that that I would actually propose to everybody, and that is globally, right, is that we have the technology, we have the platform, and we have the accessibility, and we know this method works. And that method is, if Amazon is able to deliver products to each and every home, why can't we deliver wellness services to each and every home? Let's change it up. We have enough material where we're not a materialistic world anymore. It's all about mental health now. Take care of yourself. And together with LRS's vision, it is to build a community of health and wellness professionals and utilizing your services, your technology, and to be able to deliver your services to the consumer. And that is to homes across the globe as well as corporations. Our traditional EAP system didn't work. We know it didn't. We saw it during the pandemic. There was only 7% uptake on some of the employees for what they used in their EAP service. People didn't use it. They were scared. They thought they were going to lose their jobs because of it. But whereas with LRS's EAP system, we want to go beyond the traditional services, include some of the more modern and traditional services like Reiki, yoga, aesthetics, reflexology, nutritionists, doctors. All of these people should be at your fingertips. Just like you can open the Amazon app and done, you can order your products and it's there. Let's get together and develop this so that you can open up the wellness app and there, your service is there at your fingertips. And together, and it is a big, big project, but we're going to work together and do this. And I believe it in every bit of my cell in my body.
All right. First step, the first step that everyone has to take for that mental health change. The desire to change must be greater than the desire to remain the same. Okay, the desire to change must be greater than the desire to remain the same. And that's an action call to you for everyone in us to start that change within us. Thank you.
Any closing remarks?
Let's just get together and rock the show.